What's up, ADHD crew? Today I'm going to talk about a sensitive topic, and that is revolving around the issue of whether you should take a medication or not. This is very tricky for a lot of people, especially if you're a parent deciding to put a child on medication. I totally sympathize with you. I mean, I'm not a parent myself, but I can imagine how difficult it must be to make that decision. First of all, this is an incredibly complex subject. ADHD is very complicated and it's not fully understood even to this day. So anything I say about this is going to be purely subjective, okay? So I'm not medically trained at all. This is all about my research and I'm looking for your opinion as well. So if you've got anything to add, please put it in the comments below and I'd love to hear your opinion on it. So I've been looking up information about whether you should take medications or not, and the biggest concern is around safety. And I've scoured the internet high and low for several days trying to find as much information as I can, and it seems as though there is very mixed information out there. There's a lot of bias. You've got people on one side who are pro medication and say that it's changed their lives, and you've got other people who say that it's destroyed their lives and that medications are evil, a big pharma are evil, and you should avoid them at all cost and just go the natural way.
We've got good research that shows that children who are appropriately diagnosed and appropriately treated with medication can do very well, can succeed in school.
There are long-term studies of the utility of Adderall for attention deficit disorder hyperactivity, and the results are basically negative. There's no evidence that the medications help with academic performance over the long run.
There's a higher incidence of depression, anxiety, drug abuse, alcoholism. So what we've done is we find that there are natural ways to correct these brain chemistries without using drugs.
If you follow children diagnosed with ADHD for a longer period of time, say 2 to 4 years, somewhere between 10 and 25% convert to bipolar.
And we don't see differences between those who are treated and untreated with regard to medical illness or to other function. We can see no untoward consequences.
So I can't possibly come up with a solid conclusion here. I'm bringing forth information to discuss the idea. So with regards to safety, if you're worried about whether you should take them because of health implications, first of all, you should know that in general, medical practitioners will only provide you medications if you're physically fit to take them. So what they'll do is they will evaluate your overall health, they'll look at your family history, they'll take your blood pressure, they'll ask you about your allergies, they'll take an ECG scan and hook you up to a bunch of electrodes to monitor your heart rate. They'll do a full physical examination to make sure that you're a good candidate to take the drugs in the first place. So it's quite well known that you're not really at risk of any danger unless you have underlying health conditions such as a heart condition that runs in your family, or high blood pressure and so on. But even if you do have heart conditions, it is possible for you to have a non-stimulant medication. But do you need medications? Absolutely not. You don't need to have them, but it's well known that they can have a massive benefit in your life. Now, the caveat of this is that it has to be appropriately dosed for that specific individual. There is no hard and fast rule. There's no universally ideal dosage or medication for anybody. It's all highly dependent on your genetics, your family history, and your physical health overall. I've been on medication for quite a few years now, and I'm perfectly fine. I've been monitored regularly by my physical practitioner, and there's no issues whatsoever. However, I will say that I have had quite some hard times trying to find the appropriate dose and medication for myself. So when it comes to the idea of medications being damaging, my personal opinion is that it's only going to be damaging if 1, you're abusing them, and 2, you're on an inappropriate dose or medication for you in particular. I've checked out a few studies and there's not a lot of information that actually says anything about the long-term effects of medication in human beings. I have, however, seen a few studies where animals were actually tested with the drugs, and it did show that there was some degree of neurotoxicity with very high levels of amphetamines, which is just not the case with normally prescribed dosages. There's also been studies as well that shows that children who are introduced to medications from a young age are not more likely to develop addiction problems. In fact, it seems like some of these studies are saying that when taken from a young age, it can help speed up the development of the already lagging development of the ADHD brain, which is quite fascinating. I wonder to myself what I would be like today had I had been on it as a child. But considering there's been some evidence of height growth reduction in children with ADHD medication, it does make you somewhat skeptical that it could lead to some damage. But from what I've read, it sounds like that this delay in physical growth is only temporary, and it's ceased once the child is taken off temporarily, perhaps over the summer holidays, and eventually they basically catch up. All this fear-mongering that you see in articles, and some of these biased studies that say that amphetamines such as Adderall cause neurotoxicity, as far as I can tell, I can't find any information whatsoever that actually shows that therapeutic doses cause long-term harm. So there is actually a significant lack of studies that are following children from childhood to adulthood. But if you found some evidence, please feel free to drop it below in the comments and discuss your findings. So my personal philosophy is that when it comes to medication, I think that less really is more. I don't think that you have to be on a high dose, but that's just my personal opinion. I think that if you get everything else right, everything else in order, your sleep hygiene, your nutritional intake, your physical activity, if you combine that with a low level of medication, I think that's really going to do the job. But don't take my word for it. Let me know what works for you specifically. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you can cure ADHD naturally, but you can absolutely reduce the symptoms if you get your lifestyle in check. There's plenty of articles online that you can find that backs up the claims that exercise and nutrition can aid in reducing the severity of ADHD symptoms. I can contest that I've got first-hand experience of witnessing the benefits of medication, but I have seen the ugly side of medication as well, which is why it's so important to make sure that you find the best dosage and the appropriate medication for you specifically. And it's your responsibility to find that and take the medication appropriately as you're instructed to. So really, it's all about your personal choice. It's about you doing your own research and you coming up with a decision whether you should do it or not. It's highly subjective and it's all exploratory, but you also get a lot of people who are contrarian and they're very skeptical of the pharmaceutical industry, and they'll say that things like this cause major suicidal ideations, depression, and so on. And I can understand these concerns because yes, it's bound to cause problems if you're taking far too much of anything. But let's look at the downsides of not being medicated. I mean, medications can technically save your life because if it brings you more focus and attention, you're less likely to walk across the road not paying attention and getting run over by a truck. And there are studies that show that ADHD makes you more likely to die prematurely. In my opinion, you have absolutely nothing to lose from giving it a try. Right? If you're fit and healthy, you can get tests done to make sure that you're okay to take the medications, but otherwise, you're going to be fine 99% of the time. It's your decision, just be smart, be informed when you make the decision. So if you find that you're not enjoying the experience, you can just tell your doctor and taper off them. Nobody has to take medication, it's a choice. It can improve your life, but it doesn't always seem to work that well for everybody. So I'm going to leave a few articles, studies, and videos below in the description for you to check out yourself, and you can come to your own conclusions.